Hi, welcome to our April, I don't know which one to call it, our April meeting of Trend Micro User Groups. I'm sure there's some fancy name I could give it, but yeah, whatever. This particular one, we are going to be, get my hands on my face here. We're going to be covering Cloud One Workload Security. It is part of our Cloud One security platform. As always, with any of our user group meetings, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter it into the chat or in the Q&A, and we will do our best to get it answered for you. If we are unable to answer it during the meeting, please give us your email address. We will answer it afterwards through an email. If you have any questions about what you're seeing during this and would like more information for your particular environment, please feel free to reach out to your Trend Micro representative. If you do not have one, let me know, and one will be assigned to you, if you will. And that way we can, discuss how Trend can better benefit your corporate environments. With that, I will now hand the floor over to Vitaly Shtim, who will be presenting us with Cloud One Workload Security for our April Trend Micro User Groups meeting. Take it away, Vitaly.
Thanks, Jeff. I was going to say, I don't want to interrupt you there, but if between two of us, we can't answer some questions.
I'm sure any question comes up, we'll probably get it answered, but you never know.
All right, cool. So let's get rolling. So like Jeff said, today we're going to talk about workload security, and it's part of our Cloud One platform. And I wanted to kind of go from the very, very beginning and kind of quickly dive into the deeper parts of the product because I think it will paint a better picture than what initial impressions may seem like. So without doing anything, let's run through a specific scenario, like if you're a new admin and you got stuck with this. New security administrator or just admin, and you need to actually get up and rolling. So a couple of things we're going to start with is let's deploy. Well, before getting into deployment, first of all, the visibility. So you'll be able to get your different cloud accounts as well as vCenter added, so you can get visibility of what you have. So we'll see, we have a couple of systems here that are already protected. We're going to add another one right now and see what that does for us. So we're going to jump into this Flutter here. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to deploy a machine in just a few seconds. So we're going to create a new instance in AWS. Now we're going to pick on Amazon Linux 2. So we're going to select, let's say, T3A, which is a Nitro instance, which lets us do some other things in AWS later on if needed. Configuration, I'm going to select our VPC. Obviously, this all can be scripted easily. Enable. And now...
In what ways can you script that? Vitaly, since you mentioned that, what ways can you script all that information?
Yeah, so you can use something like CloudFormation template to deploy an EC2 instance and pass your user data from Workload Security as a script. So we're going to take a look here. We're going to grab a script for our Linux platform. We can automatically assign, let's say, we're going to pick on a container policy here. We're going to dive into this in a second, exactly what that means. But we have preset configuration, or I guess a rule of engagement for the agent, how I like to call it. So we're going to grab that, copy it to clipboard. We're going to go back to our AWS. We're going to drop this into our user data. So what that means is once this is spinning up and up and running, the EC2 instance is going to run this script for us, and it will automatically install the agent. And because the activation is already hard-coded into the script, it will show up in our console in here. So we're actually deploying in here. Where is my OC main? So this is the subnet we're actually deploying into. So OC main public subnet. As you can see here, OC main. Oops, I need to change my main subnet. There you go. We have a public IP assigned, so we can actually jump into it without having to go through a bastion host.
So you did mention CloudFormation templates in the user data. Can you utilize both CloudFormation template and user data together? So have a CloudFormation template call a user data script stored in like an S3 bucket. Yeah,
that should not be a problem.
Excellent.
And ideally, what you want to, well, ideally, there's no such thing as ideal, but another option that you can do is you can already have an AMI that has the agent in it. And that way, you don't have to pass any scripts in.
And what benefits does having the deep security agent in the AMI give us?
So protection starts immediately without having to install the agent, load all the necessary kernel hooks, and then pull all the latest data or latest security metadata and information. So it can be basically running as soon as the instance is running.
Excellent.
We're going to do have one tag that I like to put here for my Nitro instances. We're going to select security group. We're going to select one that I have here. I can't remember. I believe this one will do it, but I have, oh, there. Review launch, and we're going to launch our instance, and we're going to do this. And that's it. So our instance is launching, and in just a few seconds, we're going to be able to see it show up in our security group once it gets created in our.
It's on the very bottom. You didn't give it a name.
Oh yeah, that's here. So this guy right here, it's initializing. It should be coming up here in any second. There it is. So if we don't give it a name, we're going to grab an instance ID.
So it can grab that metadata from the instance.
So, and remember, if we added a tag earlier, so this machine or this instance is not even running yet, and we already have the metadata, and you see here it's already activated. So that took what, 30 seconds maybe?
Less than, I think.
It's still initializing here on AWS side, and it's already activated on the workload security side. And it's going to install, as it's doing now, all the modules that we have pre-configured in the policy, which we haven't talked about yet, and all the other metadata, as well as the tag that I added when I was provisioning the instance. So that's pretty much it. That took maybe 10 minutes total of, and that's me kind of slowly walking, talking through it. Again, this can be automated in almost infinitely many ways to fit any tools or requirements.
And are there any particular tools we work best with besides the AWS native frameworks? Are there anything third-party wise that we integrate with?
I wouldn't call one better than the other. Anything that can run some type of script will work.
Obviously, you want to try and use native if at all possible. Obviously, yes, those would typically be better. But are there any other tools or processes we integrate with in general?
Yeah, whatever. Like I said, like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, whatever you can automate things with, because it is all script based and API driven. So that's one thing I haven't touched upon yet is the API supports all the functionality in the product, so you can basically create whatever you can imagine with the product.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit, to quote Star Wars.
Well,
so
right. Well, that's when potentially there are some limits that we haven't found out about yet. So now there you go. So it's been definitely less than about 10 minutes since we started actually doing something, and then we already have a machine that is fully protected with our standard policy. that we've set. So this policy I use for my container hosts, which I have another one running, already has a container running on it. So we don't want to, we can also go through installing Docker, deploying container on it. But I don't know if we can have enough time for that in this. So we're just going to skip that part and cut into directly on an instance that's exactly the same instance, running the same policy, but it already has a container and a web app running on it to show you exactly what that does. And in this specific case, it could have been also part of your installation or in AMI itself, that container would be running there. And you can completely automate your deployment as well as your security within with this kind of implementation.
So those engines, are you going to be covering those engines as part of your presentation? Yep. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're gonna go through all of what all of these mean, and just to give you an example, we're gonna actually jump in some of those. I already pre-populated some of the events. So going from here, we're gonna close this because we're looking at the single computer view, but we're actually gonna take a look at this XDR container policy. So we're gonna come to policies. There's a couple in here, as you can see. There's some base, and here's some policies with some children within them that inherit configuration from the parent. And we're going to take a look at this one. So this is the one that we have assigned to. Actually, let's see what this is assigned to. So this is the instance that we just deployed, and there is another one that we're going to take a look at in a second too. So basically, what this policy configuration is set, that's what the agent is going to be doing. And there is anti-malware, which as you would expect from an endpoint solution. We have our runtime real-time scan running that's doing all the protection, has all the bells and whistles that you would expect from modern solution that would protect you from things like ransomware, process injection, or things like Mimikatz credential dumping, which we're actually going to show in a minute. So that configuration is here. WebRep, straightforward, blocks communication to malicious domains. Activity monitoring is very simple one, just you disable or enable it. This is where the EDR, XDR comes into play. So we're collecting the telemetry from that endpoint and we have that enabled. So any activity that is happening, we can collect it and analyze it in our data lake to detect and protect from more advanced threats. I'm going to skip down to intrusion prevention because this is the one that I'm going to highlight next once we're done with the policy. So this piece uses recommendation scans to detect what platform its agents are installed on. So in this case, we have both of these systems are Amazon Linux 2. One of them has a Docker installed on it and a running a Java-based app. So in this recommendation scan will detect there is Docker installed. It will apply necessary rules for that platform, the patch level, any other things. For example, if there was like Apache installed, it will also add specific vulnerability rules for those platforms and applications. As you can see, there's current state 79 assigned and 37 are still needed to be assigned and one needs to be unassigned. So you can change these as needed. So we can take a look here, what is actually assigned. So right here, assigned. And we see that there is quite a few. And the ones that are highlighted or bolded out, it means the administrator has changed them into one way, shape, or form. So what this
just to clear, some do require some configuration then?
Some do. So for example, if you have an application that runs not on the common port and you want to only look at certain ports, you can configure that as well. That's mostly where the configuration is going to come from is instead of looking at all of the ports, you would specify what port your application is using, or maybe which directory certain part of the application resides in order for it to inspect properly. Also configuration.
So there's no limitation on the ports. There's no limitation on the ports that this product can inspect.
No. So, and you can, so the limitation is within your configuration. So if you're going into, I believe it's under Firewall and stateful configuration, we're going to take a look here, which ports need to be inspected. And I know there is that configuration. So
cough, it's under your components list. It's not in your policy.
Oh,
it would be something you add to your policy. Minimize that window.
Okay.
Go into your common objects and you're over here.
Yeah, port list, but I'm trying to remember where it's exactly set in the policy where you can configure that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so going to policies, let's say XDR. I know it is configurable under, let's see, put me in the spot. It's been a while since we looked into that.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, man. I got to ask the hard questions.
Let's see.
At least I'm not making you eat any hot wings while I'm doing it.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna make me crave wings for this. It's evasion. I know it's in here somewhere. I'm trying to remember where inline mode default.
I'm sure you'll come across as we're going. If I remember correctly, it's somewhere under Firewall, which is where we were heading before, but perhaps under Advanced or something. I don't know. No.
So for some reason I thought it was under stateful configuration here, but I don't see it. Oh, you jinxed us because you said we're gonna, or I jinxed.
Yep.
Because I said,
hey, look at there. See, we always got to find something weird. We can't have a TMUG without something that can't be answered.
Okay. Okay. Now it's gonna bother me that I don't remember off the top of my head. All right, let's move on. So intrusion prevention actually works in tandem with Firewall. So whenever either one of those is enabled, it uses the same common kernel hook, I guess you can call it, to inspect the traffic. So even when you have Firewall off, even though in case we have it on, what you will get is things like reconnaissance detection. So actually this other machine that we have running for a while, it actually has reconnaissance detected on it because somebody was doing looks like OS fingerprint probe, and that also can be configured and detected. So this was the offender that was doing it. This was almost a month ago, but it's in here, as you can see, and it's passively doing its job, and you can automatically block that IP for X amount of time whenever there is reconnaissance detected, or you can ignore it. But at least you'll know that it's happening. So we can stay in here, and log inspection and integrity monitoring are the two pieces that are very, very helpful when it comes to things like PCI and other compliance, that you can leverage real-time monitoring to see which files, directories, etc., are modified within the system. And it operates in a similar fashion that we talked about recommendation scans for intrusion prevention, and it will assign and unassign rules as needed. So if there is, for example, Exchange server installed on your system, it will see that and would apply appropriate rules for Exchange. If it's Linux platform, Linux appropriate rules will be set, etc. It's not going to add like a registry monitoring on a Linux system, because that would not make sense. And also, you can also scan for integrity. So if you wanted to do periodic scanning, maybe weekly or monthly, to show, okay, which files or which things on the system have been changed, and instead of doing it real time, you can say, okay, I need a report, show me what has been changed, or to prove that it hasn't been changed. So that's kind of the idea here. And log inspection, again, it's collecting the higher system level data from within the operating system. The default rules here can be very, some of these, like this one, I believe, has very, very detailed set of things what it's looking for. So you can see there's quite a few things that is actually analyzing, and that's just under this specific rule. And you can set thresholds when to be notified when certain things happen. So maybe somebody's brute forcing your application or a system, and you don't need to see all 10,000 or 100,000 events. You can say, okay, only notify me once if it happens X amount of time over X number of times over X amount of time. So that's pretty much that. Oh, the last one I did not mention was application control, which you'll notice it's in allow mode. You can use that. So let's say we talked about earlier from the deployment method, if you have a AMI that you're going to be using and you already have everything pre-installed on it, that you know that you will need to run, let's say from this point on for the next 3 months until you update the AMI for the latest software and do your patching, you can use application control to completely lock it down. So no changes happen, no kind of background automated processes will try to update the application, or somebody intentionally wants to update it, will not be able to. But if there is need to do in-place upgrading or kind of patching, you can use maintenance mode to allow that to happen, which can also be configured through API and done on schedules, etc. So that's a quick rundown of all the modules. There's probably some questions that come from looking all of this. But once the policy is set, which is basically what we just did, kind of went through all of these and just turning them on, you have one thing we probably want to do as well, and this guy. And we're going to kick off a recommendation scan just because we have it running on schedule right now, and the system hasn't ran it yet. So we're going to ran scan for recommendations, and that's going to happen in the background. So right now it only has the rules that are within the policy, but it can add additional rules for this specific platform as needed. So you can assign rules on the policy level and then add additional rules on the individual machine level, or let the system do it on its own. You can also use things like third-party vulnerability scanners to use that report from vulnerabilities and actually apply the necessary rules in here as well. So again, there's many ways to do this, whichever makes most sense and is the easiest is what we recommend. Excuse me. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into here. And this is the app that is running on this system that we already had running, which is OC Docker Ubuntu. You'll see here that this is the IP address of the system. And we are conducting, actually we can just tap it again, open new tab, paste it, and then we're going to drop it on port 8080, because that's where the container is listening on. Just a simple, very vulnerable application, and we're going to do a very simple attack, which is going to be just a SQL injection. And what will happen is your request has been blocked. This is using actually another layer of trans technology within the application itself that is blocking it. And if we go here, what you'll notice is that in the actual machine that has this, that we ran it on. So we ran this on this machine. And what you'll notice is Intrusion Prevention is currently in detect only mode. So what happens is it passes the traffic and then notifies that, hey, there has been SQL injection. And we're going to show that in a second. So we're going to switch this to prevent. I'm going to close it, give it a second to up. In the meantime, let's jump into the dashboard. And we'll see here that under Intrusion Prevention, we have our generic SQL injection being triggered. And we can also do that through events and reports, which at this point, this is not how you'll be, ideally you wouldn't be using this console for the security kind of overall kind of management of it. In Workload Security, it's configuration of the policies, and then actual security pieces and security auditing and detection, etc. That's all going to be done in the Division 1 console, which I'm going to jump into in a second. But I'll show you that you can actually see those here as well. So we're going to click on the Intrusion Prevention events. We're going to take a look at the last hour, refresh, and you'll see is, I'm still looking at system events. Hold on. There you go. and then refresh. So we have detected SSH server traffic, generic SQL injection. And then there's some of the other stuff is just happening because I have these systems specifically exposed to the world. And you'll see detect only reset. And what we're going to do now.
Yeah, you're not sorting by time, but your other one was actually first when you look at the time, your SQL injection.
Oh, yeah. So this.
I don't know what you're sorting as, but it's not time.
Yeah. This is from probably still, let's see, what time is it? 28.
There you go.
Yep, that's it. And then, so let me see. Let's sort this out. Let's give it a good warden. Here, sign in. All right, so now we should see our event as being blocked or reset. Give it a moment for it to show up. And basically,
yeah, it's going to take a few seconds.
Even here in the data, you can see the packet information that was happening. So we'll see that there's select from user, and this was the SQL injection that I was using to make that attack. So, go ahead, Jeff. I heard a big...
No, nothing. Just breathing in. Sorry.
All right, so let me refresh this. There we go. So we still have it. Oh, actually, it's still in reset. Let me see. Maybe I did not save it. Computers. Where is it? I might not have saved Intrusion Prevention. Prevent. Yes. So that I might have the actual rule itself in detect mode too. So that's probably what's happening. So we're going to jump into the rule. And then, because instead of not just the actual engine itself, there we go. So this is why it was highlighted bold, is because I had this changed from prevent to detect. So we're going to bring it back to prevent, save that. And it should, there's one more rule in here. And I'm going to go back in here. There we go. So now we're getting connection reset, and because it's actually dropping the packet versus just giving us this login error. And this is actually a response from the application, which is not good. But in this case, we're dropping that packet on the network layer because we're detecting that the attack. So I'm going to close this out. Here
and that's where it leverages the firewall portion, right?
Yeah. So the network inspection portion, firewall and IP, they're going to work hand in hand.
So even if you're not using the firewall, it still utilizes pieces of the firewall.
Correct. Yep. Excuse me. So now we're going to go into our events reports one more time, intrusion prevention. And as you can see here, we're getting the reset for SQL injection. And here's my IP address. And here is destination. Looks different. Let's see. All right, so that's the quick and dirty from Kata administration. And now what our next part I wanted to talk about was actually, oops, not that one, this one. So now that we're looking at this, let me pause sharing. So we'll do a quick search, and we're going to search on that same IP address that we were looking at a second ago. So we're going to do, if I remember correctly, so this is our security center side, where we're actually going to look at everything that's happening. So we're looking at any activity from all of our endpoints over, in this case, 30 days. We don't really have to go 30 days, but what we'll see, the system has all of this activity happening on it. And we have some detections and some activity information. So we're going to take a look at these guys. And on the left side, we have our endpoint activity data. There's different categories for things. So we'll see these are the different IPs that we've picked up from our activity. And here is let me see, where is it? So you see there's our detection happened on a port 80. This was the IP of the system that's in question, which was the machine that we were just attacking. Here's some other information coming through it. And we're going to take a look at one of these, which actually is SQL injection. Collapse these. And then I might have framework. Where is detected? We can append this to only look for this as well. Let's see. So what is this attack we have in here? Rule name, HTTP request, host name, IP address. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the background in here as well. So it may take us a second. But basically, you can search for everything, all the attacks, all the activity, all the telemetry that is happening on this specific system. And to see historically or in real time what's going on. If there is something bigger happening, so SQL injection is not a great over threat, right? If you know you're mitigating it, it's not a big deal. But let's say you had something else going on and, and then I have an example here of Workbench being triggered is from Mimikatz being used on one of the servers. So you see here. So this is something that is actionable, right? So there's a lot of activity happening on endpoints and servers all the time. And we can actually drill into the observed attack techniques a little more. But once the system collects data and it puts it together and it looks like something bigger is going on, you're going to get a workbench. And from that workbench, in this case, this was a Mimikatz ran on the system. So you can dig a little deeper, check execution profile. So you'll see that there was Explorer, launched PowerShell, and here's the information about that script. And let's say you wanted to actually connect to the system as well. Let me see if this works. I know I broke something earlier today and it wasn't happy. Let me go back to here.
Yeah, so you just close the X. So.
And then we're gonna do start remote shell session. And we should be getting, I know in this environment, I've had issues today, but establishing session, but the way that should look like in a bigger an event like this one, we can start remote shell session and you can run commands directly on that system from your security console. So for example, running for check what processes are running, etc. You can also pull files from those systems to do deeper analysis, forensics, etc. And once you do end the session, you'll do your description, we'll do testing in this place, etc. We're going to send it, and then it's going to show you historical when that remote sessions were done, and then what exactly happened during those remote sessions when it happened for auditing purposes. So basically making sure that whoever has access to do remote sessions is not doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Any operating system limitations for that?
No, all systems currently support it.
So Windows, Mac, and Linux, correct?
Windows, Mac, and Linux, yes.
Excellent.
Let's see. So in this case, let's see, what did we do here? So I tried this. Let's see. So going back to in here, observer attack techniques, that are another part that I wanted to show. This is from my live environment. We're going to take a look at high and medium. We're going to look at the last 7 days. And we're going to have to filter out some of the ones that are super noisy once it pulls up. So this one happens all the time. Somebody's always trying to brute force my RDP. So we're going to get rid of those. That happens like every 5 seconds. So now we're just looking at a more cohesive information here from different systems. There's also endpoints in here because we have our other solution that is submitting data to here, which runs on Windows 7, Windows 10, and Mac OS platforms, specifically for user protection. And then you'll see here, excuse me, PCR EC2 instances. We have some multiple SSH connections. We have our virus or malware, and we did have Mimikatz right here that was being detected. As you can see, it was a critical. That's what triggered that workbench earlier that I showed. And again, from here, you can add things to blacklist. So let's see if we have maybe not the specific one because that one doesn't have it. Let's see if I can let's see which one I can do that on.
Typically, it's going to be a file,
Oh yeah, I'm trying to
IP address, anything along those lines that you'd be blocking.
GUI, file name, file path. So we can add like file name to exception. So if there is a false positive, let's see, we can collect the file like I was mentioning earlier. And for we don't have an actual SHA value, I believe, in here, so we can't do it. I need to get a different detection here. Let me see. Maybe we can do this. Which one is that file? There you go. Add to exceptions again here on the SHA-1 value. Or add it to user-defined suspicious objects list. So this means basically, okay, malicious and block it on etc. So what that would look like is, where's our malicious management? So we have a couple of here. We already have an IP address and a domain. We can also add files like I showed by SHA value, etc. So kind of going back to and circling back to the beginning. Where is our console here? Excuse me. So this is where the actual configuration of settings happens. And once that's done, which took only a few moments for us to do, you can deploy those same policies across all of your environments. The recommendation scans will automatically apply the necessary rules as needed. And then from that point on, you're just basically, primary point is going to be the workbench. You'll be notified immediately if something gets triggered. The different workbenches or workbench models are listed here, and they're always being updated and new ones added as needed. So we can take a look at this one that has a lot more workbenches triggered on it. You'll see that they're going to be ranked by score for different models that are triggered. So for example, the proxy logon right here. There is also credential dumping that's similar to what we saw in the other console. And those will be notified. This is something that should be investigated as a high priority. And then if you want to, you can always dig deeper into the activity monitoring or observe the attack techniques and see what else is happening in your environment. You can remote into the systems to collect data, see what processes are running, etc. Do full-blown investigation as needed. So
you just mentioned something that was very important. So the activity monitoring, that is part of Cloud One Workload Security. And if that is not enabled, you would not be seeing these things in Vision 1.
Yep, absolutely. So kind of going back into any of these systems here, this activity monitoring checkbox on or off, what defines whether or not the systems are submitting this telemetry to the kind of the security metadata to the actual console. So this is real-time activity, not threats, because threat detections, that happens no matter what, right? If there's malware detected, you're going to get a log in anti-malware, or if it's IPS, you're going to get it in IPS, or if it's a firewall, etc. So this is what we're talking about, right? This also all in here.
But it provides a correlation, if you will.
Correct. Provides a correlation, and then the activity monitoring part. Let me close this. The activity monitoring part from the policy. This collects all of the non-malicious as well. So if there's processes created, launched, etc. So when things do happen that are malicious, you can actually look back and see, okay, where did this start? What else happened around that time that may not have been malicious necessarily? Because you can use native and security tools in both malicious and non-malicious ways. So PS exec is a good example of that. Exactly. So if you have PS exec happening before or after a malicious event, well, the risk, the likelihood of that PS exec being malicious is so much higher, right? Unless you have it happening constantly anyway.
So the key is with that is the activity monitoring is recording everything that's going on, but in deep security, Cloud and Workload Security itself, it's recording the malicious events that has occurred. So your logs within Cloud and Workload Security is going to be more around detections of malicious intent, such as piece of malware being ran, anything along those lines. But the URL where that file was downloaded, or the IP address where it was retrieved, that's something that's going to be showing in XDR.
Right. Correct? So in Vision 1 in XDR, you'll see all of that information, right? All of it is going to be here. This has a smaller subset of information, just the actual threat intel, not the activity. So you can still,
it has kind of the raw data, if you will.
Yeah, you can call it like a raw unprocessed. Basically, here's everything that happened. Here is you have analytics happening on that data to make more sense out of it. Because if you look here, and this is a small subset, we have, up until this call, we had two systems here, one Windows and one Linux. Here's the amount of stuff that is happening. We're talking about tens of thousands of events per hour that are happening from Firewall, IPS, a couple hundred. Somebody is always trying to brute force RDP on this one. You can actually take a look.
Yeah, it's Amazon. It's constant. I see that as well in my lab.
Yeah, so you can see that's happening from different addresses. And that's, in reality, when you have more than a handful of systems, this becomes noise, which is completely useless. It is helpful that you know that you're getting the protection, like if the brute force is being reset, so nobody's compromising your system. But in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to be going down, okay, which IP did this attack come from? Okay, this is 91.220. The next one is also 91.220. Okay, there's 31.42. Again, 91.220. So that is raw data, which the Vision 1 can actually analyze and put in context. So, excuse me, when something happens, for example, maybe they do manage to brute force or use something else, and then you also have communication to the same IP, you can actually start pulling these things together without having to do any work. So that's the quick.
All right. So going back to Cloud One, then, what are some other special things that Cloud One Workload Security can give us over, say, some other competitor or something along those lines besides the XDR correlations? Any special things in here? Obviously, you covered intrusion prevention. Being able to block vulnerabilities and exploits directly on the host is spectacular. Obviously, if we don't have a patch available for it, but we know how to block it, we can block it. Anything else that Cloud One Workload Security can give us?
Absolutely. Like kind of going back to being able to kind of taking the hardening of the system to the next level is using application control to block any new software from being installed, launched. That's very powerful because even if the attacker is able to somehow compromise or drop something on the system, this will prevent that, let's say, script or executable from actually running. So it's a very powerful control. Depending what environment and how secure it needs to be, it can be very beneficial. We're going to kind of revert back to integrity monitoring, also very powerful when compliance is in question, whether it's HIPAA, PCI, even GDPR. If you wanted to show the integrity of your systems, this will help you without having to deploy any other agents or to do anything other than check the box, right? You check the box, you check whether or not you wanted to have the real time or not, and that's it. The real-time scan will run, and we recommend that to run on schedule.
And what can the integrity monitoring monitor? Just file integrity, or is there other things it can do?
Oh, so it can do things like giving ports, I believe registry changes as well. Let's see, what else? Excuse me. So going back here, we do have our directories, ports, files, etc. So you can create your content rules as needed. So you have your file names.
Oh, so you can create your own integrity monitoring rules as well if you have a custom
Absolutely.
app in your
You have your
environment.
registry values, you have your files, custom XML, so you can import as needed and select what you're actually looking for.
Okay.
So,
and does that work for intrusion prevention as well? Can you create your own rules for intrusion prevention?
Absolutely. Yep. So intrusion prevention is very complex, so would not recommend to actually creating your own rules because you can probably more do harm than good, but it is an option. Usually you would want to engage trend support if there is a specific use case, maybe an application or some custom app, etc., that you would wish to have a new intrusion prevention rule, but you can definitely add it.
So if something was found with a custom application using like Qualys or Nessus or something like that, even though it's a custom application, we can involve Trend to help us fix that in our environment, that particular exploit that might exist. Absolutely. Or vulnerability, I should say, before it's exploited.
Yep, exactly. But just to kind of reiterate, there's a lot of rules here. It's not like there's only 50 or a couple hundred rules. There's 7,700 plus rules as of today. Probably grew by like 2,000 in the last 4 years. We release rules every Tuesday.
I can state when I first started 5 years ago, it was 4,800.
Yeah.
So it's grown almost 3,000 in 5 years.
Yep. So I remember I was in the 5,000 range when I started, so which was 4 years ago in 2 weeks or a week. Yeah. So again, you can create custom rules for all three of these. Obviously, you can create rules for firewall. So log inspection, integrity monitoring, intrusion prevention. You can create custom rules. Firewall, we didn't really talk about it other than wanted to add it as bidirectional stateful. We did talk about reconnaissance that you can configure it. And as you can see, I'm using it just to get some data into it to log for RDP, SSH. And you can actually see what type of information we're seeing here. So just for logging purposes, I have all of that information collected just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Now, if you have multiple, let's say you've installed this agent on a local system. So this is running out in the cloud, and you're able to tie it into AWS, Azure, so on and so forth. I can install this on a machine that's local in my virtual environment on premises. Does it give me the same capabilities there?
It's exactly the same functionality, no matter where the deployment happens, as long as the platform is supported. The limitations are only for the platform itself. So, for example, like
Windows XP. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. So, like something like Windows XP is not going to have machine learning because that operating system did not have that capability at the time. Anything over after that will have predictive machine learning running on it, but that's basically the limitation. If it's running in AWS under your desk or in some colo data center, it doesn't matter. The only requirement for it to work properly is to have access to the internet. So outbound access, no inbound ports are needed. It's all agent initiated communication over port 443. So
this can work in pretty much any cloud environment, not just the big three, AWS, Google, or Azure. I could say be an Oracle Cloud or IBM Cloud for that matter, it'll still work.
Alibaba or whatever else exists out there in the world.
Even servers hosted in Rackspace.
Yes. It does not matter. The environment it is deployed in. The only thing it relies on is the kernel support for that platform, if it's Linux or if it's Windows, to have the appropriate agent support. And to get that information, you can take a look at your agents. So we'll see the latest agent. This is the latest support that we have for the latest agent. You can see the dates when it was added. So there's a lot.
One more thing, since you brought this up, I see the different agent versions there. In my environment, we have a way to test for specific versions, test our environment against specific versions. Since this is a cloud-based one, I'm assuming you guys provide updates. Is there any way to lock my machines to specific versions because I've tested against a certain one until I get time to test against a newer version?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you have kind of QA that requires you to stay on certain versions and kind of homogenize your environment. You can use agent version control if it loads here. Let me refresh this page. To select for which platform, which version of the agent you wish to be on. So for example, if it's sent to us overall and you want it to stay the latest always, then it's fine. And then you can select for platform. You can say, okay, I want this this version to be on this build, this version to be on this build, etc. You can customize it, but just remember that whatever that build is, that it's going to stay on that build until you change it, right? So if we've released 10 other versions since then, you want to go back and change it.
Now, will I get an alert that lets me know that I have quote unquote out of date versions?
Yes, you'll be notified.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can, it's as easy as going to here. All of my stuff is currently up to date for some of the new features that came out. You can do upgrade agent software here from the console, but in my case, I already have the latest one, so it doesn't give me an option. Otherwise, so I believe if we do multiples, it'll give me the option to do. So if you had an option to upgrade to a later version, it would be in here, and then it'll show me all the possible versions that are newer than the one I'm currently on.
Okay. Well, we only got about 5 minutes left. So did anybody who is attending have any questions? Feel free to drop it in the chat or the Q&A. We'll get those answered before we run out of time. In the meantime, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to cover about Cloud One real quick, Vitaly.
Just a couple of points that everybody should be aware of when working with workload security is APIs and user guide. So going through either from, let me see here, and you can go to support APIs.
They moved it on you, by the way.
Yeah, it's moved a couple of times already, but it will take you to here. You select your workload security. You can do your cookbooks here that are examples of how to do certain things. You can do your API reference. And Zoom pop up right there is on my way. There we go. And then you can use APIs as needed. So for whatever it is you're trying to do, you can do search. You can have your Java, Python, JavaScript examples that are applicable to certain calls. And that's about it. So like I said, very rich API, helps with automation greatly. And we do have cookbooks, like I mentioned, that you can leverage to do certain things. So get a list of computers, etc., in Bash or any other language.
I guess my last question then is, do we integrate with any other security products within AWS or Azure with this product?
We do. So we do have integration through SNS, and pretty much after that, the world's your oyster. So if we go
things like guard duty or anything like that?
Yeah. So we do have a control tower to automate the addition of all of the cloud accounts, kind of expedite that process, make it easier. We do guard duty and a couple others. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me see, where is our event forwarding? We have our SNS in here, and you can select what information to send to. But again, kind of going back to the APIs, you can automate even things like isolating machines or changing security groups based on things being detected. So let's say if you have reconnaissance detected, or if you have a brute force or SQL injection from things that we talked about today happening on any of the systems, you can have AWS automatically change the security group settings. So let's say, okay, add this IP to block list on the security group, or add that IP to the firewall in workload security, or completely lock down that system altogether. So you can create any type of response fully automated as needed. So let's say maybe if there is malware detected, or maybe like memory dumping, like Mimikatz happens on the system, you want to make sure, okay, if that happens on any of my systems, I want it to be out, right? So you can integrate through workload security. You can also, if you want to, you can do that through Vision One APIs as well. And again, AWS also has rich, obviously, integration to do whatever you want through APIs and scripting. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, I don't see any questions come up. So unless there's anything else, I'll let you sign us off. But other than that, I thank everyone for attending. We will be posting up the recording of this as soon as I get it and clean it up. We'll post it out on our YouTube channel with the link on it to the meetup page as well. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself. I'll get you in touch with your systems engineer, your solutions engineer. And if you don't have one, we'll get one to you. Vitaly, like to add anything on the end there?
I just wanted to thank everybody for joining. And like you said in the beginning, if you have any questions, concerns, shoot us an email, etc. And we'll more than glad to help.
All right. Thank you very much. And everyone, please enjoy the remainder of your week, and we'll see you at the next TMUG.